Hi, my name is Theodore Harrison, and this is my final for COMS 117. It's titled Perry Medea Goes to Jail, Exploitation of Black Crime and Mass Incarceration. So some of you say, really? Is Tyler Perry, is that a serious issue? Yes. Looking at how issues are framed and how they're presented in media has a big impact on how people form perceptions and how they form stereotypes. More specifically, media depictions frame events in ways that constrain how an audience can interpret those events. So I'll give you an example of what I mean. If I said to you there's a problem with white crime, many of you would say, huh? What do you mean? Explain that. Tell me what you're talking about. But what if I said to you there's a problem with black crime? Many of you already have perceptions of what that is. You can visualize who that is, what that is. And how is that formed? And I'll give you an example of how that's constructed. If you look at this ad for Facebook, the ad is actually for anyone to request their criminal background history report. But as a method of getting your attention, drawing you to the ad, they use a picture of a black male, which actually has nothing to do with the ad itself. But that's the face of crime. If you multiply that by 800 million users, you begin to see how that can be constructed. But if we even look at it closer, we see a bigger issue, which is on the left, you see the guy. This is his original picture. He was already having a bad day. But if you look on the right side, the picture has been altered to create a more menacing, a more subhuman, more ridicule. And that, in essence, in a short synopsis, is how the theory of black crime, or phenomenon of black crime, is constructed and created. So today we're here to talk about Tyler Perry. And some of you say, who is Tyler Perry? Well, he's a film, television, and stage producer. And I'll share a short clip with you that you can see where he talks about his film, how he makes his film. So we see from there he's very specific in his storytelling. And from that you would say even, okay, well, why pick him just because of that? He was rated by Forbes as the highest paid man in all of entertainment for the period 2010-2011. He made about $130 million. He's made 12 films. They've grossed about $600 million. The 12 films, about $50 million each. But really the most important reason that we picked him is scholars have researched his work, and they found that he has a basic monopoly right now on how African Americans are portrayed, particularly middle class African Americans are portrayed in media. And that's a very powerful position, and we want to see how he uses that power. By comparison, another popular filmmaker, Spike Lee, over 25 years he made about $374 million, and Perry has eclipsed that in about 5 years. And here we have a quote from another scholar who believes that those who exist with this power that Perry has, they have a special responsibility to disrupt basically negative stereotypes or oppression, to use that power. So my hypothesis was that Perry would actually use that power. He would employ counter-hegemonic themes in the movie, and they would disrupt historically negative stereotypes of African Americans. So next we want to look at what is the methodology that we use to test this. First we're going to test the null hypothesis, which is we're going to test to try and disprove the hypothesis. The first thing we need to do is look at our assumptions. One is that mass incarceration has already occurred, and given that the movie is about incarceration, that's an important assumption, and it's based on some interesting statistics. One is which the prison population of the U.S. versus the Caribbean. So you see it's almost double. But more interesting, if you look at Brazil, which is the largest country in Latin America, they have about 496,000 people incarcerated, and that's all races, all combined, all sex. Whereas the U.S. has almost 846,000 African American males just by themselves, which is more than the entire country of Brazil. So that kind of supports that assumption. Our second assumption is American hegemony is dominant and pervasive, and that establishes that the negative stereotypes of African Americans are embedded into American mass media, and we've relied on the previous scholarly work from other scholars. So how did we, or why did we pick the movie that we picked of his 12 movies? Or why not sample all of them? If you notice, there's one movie stands out amongst all of his movies. It's Tyler Perry, Madea Goes to Jail. It made about $90 million, which is substantially more than all of his movies. The red line is the average for his movies with regression, and you see that it's significantly more. Also, it was #1 movie in America for about 3 weeks, and it has all his major characters in it. So to code our movie, we needed a method of coding for our analysis, and I used Cedric Clark's 1969 stages of minority representation, and there are 4 stages for the coding. There's non-recognition, where they're not recognized at all. There's ridicule, where they're portrayed as silly, stupid, irrational, or laughable. There's regulation, where they're in the role of enforcer or administrator of the dominant group's norm. And there's respect, where they're portrayed no differently than anyone else. So if we examine that model and we actually look at how it's constructed, this is an example of ridicule. This would have occurred in the 30s, 40s, Amos and Andy, minstrel shows, those type of shows. And if you move into the 60s, 70s, you start to see regulation, where African Americans are portrayed as police officers, spies, detectives, those type of things. You move into the 80s, 90s, you start to see them in a role of respect, where they're portrayed no differently than anyone else. So that was what we would find as counter-hegemony. If they were portrayed in the role of respect, you disrupted or showed resistance to ridicule and regulation, and that's what we'd be looking for Tyler Perry. Conversely, negative stereotypes of African Americans would be in the sense of ridicule, and we would see minorities playing the role of regulation, and we would only see small token representations of respect. So the movie was divided into 48 scenes using a video editing software, and it was coded with the model we just discussed using an Excel spreadsheet. We use ethnographic content analysis, and that's really a method of using where you have a theory and you can verify and confirm that meaning in the relationships. And it relied on the work of David Althede, a PhD at Arizona State University. So what were the results we found? Well, the results we found was, one, the hypothesis was rejected. We weren't able to find any counter-hegemonic themes that challenged the status quo, that challenged negative stereotypes. In fact, we saw ridicule and we saw regulation. So an example of the regulation we saw minority judges, and both of these actually have reality shows in there where they appear as regulators of the dominant group's norm. We also saw dominant group members appear as helpers of the oppressed. So here you have Dr. Phil appearing as a helper. We also have ridicule and disdain between African Americans. And we have ridicule and glorification of criminal behavior. So here you have him smoking marijuana, and he's sitting next to an oxygen tank. So what does all that mean? Is that important? Does that have any real world implication? Well, first we saw the normalization of mass incarceration, and that's based on there was glorification of drugs, but there was no it did not speak to the drug war or any of the ill effects of it. That black males are convicted at a rate 50% higher than white males, and also in some cities there 80% is what the estimate of black males that have records in some large urban cities. And if you see that clip, you get a sense of how it normalizes mass incarceration by suggesting that everyone there is no different, that there's no one's treated any differently, and that normalizes people to the mass incarceration when the numbers don't support that, the statistics don't support that. And so if we look at the stereotypes that are used as black crime as entertainment, we begin to see a troubling trend right here. And there's one example. We also have the movie contains sexual assault, prostitution, but more troubling, it was nominated for a Kids' Choice Award. So the target audience for Nickelodeon's Kids' Choice Award is about 6 to 13, and these children are still forming perceptions, images of people, and that further uses black crime as entertainment and builds that black crime stereotype. And it defeats the purpose of what postmodern black producers should be striving to achieve, which is to create alternative perceptions of African Americans. And another scholar noted that some of Tyler Perry's movies, they actually pull the trigger on our own image assassination. And as we saw with the Trayvon Martin case, stereotypes can play a big role in how people perceive other people, regardless of something as simple as walking to the store. And I'd like to acknowledge the following people. Thank you.